Hartford, Connecticut, 1910s. The echoes of America's most famous humorist once filled these halls. Tonight, the lights dim. The tour guide's hand hovers over the switch. Are you sure you want to hear the dark story of Mark Twain's mansion? This house was built as a dream. Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, lived here with his family. Laughter rang through these rooms, books were written beside the fireplace, and the air smelled of ink, pine, and hope. Christmas trees glittered, dinners sparkled with friends and celebrities, and stories told aloud could make even strangers chuckle. But life, even for Mark Twain, had other plans. The first blow came quietly, a daughter's illness that would never relent. The second, a cascade of financial misfortunes. Investments failed, debts piled up. The fortune that once seemed endless vanished like smoke. And the third, cruelest of all, a wrenching decision to abandon the house that no longer felt like home, that now smelled faintly of grief, silence, and loss. Twain's mansion, once a beacon of laughter, was sliced into apartments, rented as offices. The halls that held the echoes of joy became a strange, dark maze. Footsteps whispered in empty corridors. Shadows lingered, and some say the faint image of a little girl still climbs the stairs at night. Decades later, developers wanted to erase it completely, replace it with a parking lot. And yet somehow it endured. Against all odds, the house survived. How does a place where laughter was born become a ghost of its own story? Why, against time and misfortune, did it not vanish entirely? If you love deep dives into Gilded Age architecture and the lives of the families who built them, hit like, subscribe, and share in the comments which home we should explore next. Your support fuels these detailed cinematic journeys. Chapter 1. The House That Laughed Before It Went Silent. The tour guide's hand brushes the switch. Darkness swallows the drawing room. 20 visitors freeze. Outside, Farmington Avenue hums with the modern world. Inside, silence feels ancient. Can a house remember grief? The guide asks. A phone glows for a heartbeat, then dies. Eyes widen. The guide's voice floats on the quiet. In this room, Samuel Clemens read stories to his 3 daughters every evening. They sat right here by the fireplace. He made them laugh. He made the entire country laugh. But in 1896, tragedy struck. Susie, his eldest daughter, only 24, fell ill upstairs, meningitis. Her parents were absent, traveling abroad to manage crushing debts. Only Clara, the middle daughter, made it home in time. Susie's cries went unanswered. The house could not save her. Fame could not save her. Wealth could not save her. The lights snap on. The tour resumes. Visitors drift past carved wood and stained glass, up the grand staircase. They take photos, read plaques, leave. But one remains, Maya, 28, architecture vlogger. Camera bag over one shoulder, notebook in hand. She came seeking content, a grand Victorian mansion with history and striking visuals, but the guide's story lands harder than she expected. 2 years ago, Maya lost her own father. His house, too, was sold soon after. The memories too painful, the spaces too empty. She did not allow herself to think about it until now. She lingers in the front hall. Sunlight filters through stained glass, painting the floor with red and blue patterns, like the house itself is bleeding color. Her eyes trace the carved wooden staircase. They say a coffin was carried down these stairs in 1896, Susie's small body leaving the house forever. Her parents absent. Only Clara witnessed the scene. Maya feels a tightness in her chest. She steps into the dining room. The table is set with period china, polished silver. It is as if the family might walk in at any moment. But they never returned. After Susie's death, the Clemens family came back only briefly to pack their things. Their beloved home became a shell. Apartments, offices, strangers wandering through halls that once sang with laughter. By the 1920s, anyone could rent a room here and never know whose joy once filled the air. Yet the house remembered. Shadows lingered, whispers persisted. The walls held grief, memory, and the faint echo of a family who once believed in forever. Maya checks her watch. The museum closes in an hour. She takes a final walk, tracing the halls with her eyes, listening for echoes of laughter and sorrow. Some houses forget, some endure. This one, against every expectation, still remembers, still tells its story. Maya has time for one last walkthrough. She climbs the back stairs, narrow, steep, and far less grand than the main staircase. These were the servants' steps, worn by the hands and feet of cooks, maids, and the coachmen who kept the mansion running. Their names are mostly forgotten, but their presence lingers in the air. At the top, she finds Susie's bedroom. The door stands open. The room is small, almost startlingly plain compared to the ornate halls below. A single bed, a modest writing desk, faded floral wallpaper restored with care. Maya lingers in the doorway, feeling the weight of history pressing in. This is where it ended. The innocence of childhood, the sense of safety, the belief that love and success could shield you from the world. She raises her camera for a photo, then lowers it. Outside, November winds rattle the windows. The house settles with creaks and groans. Below, the last visitors shuffle out, their footsteps fading. Maya whispers to herself, "I came for architecture, but this isn't about bricks or wood. This is about what remains when dreams collapse, when a house becomes a monument to everything you lost." Her eyes catch a small detail. On the desk lies a reproduction of Susie's letters. Maya leans closer. The handwriting is careful, bright with hope. A young woman writing about her future, one she would never see. Chapter 2. Building a Dream in Brick and Ghostly Blue. Maya leaves the room and descends the main staircase, her fingers trailing along the carved banister. Every detail of this house was deliberate. Every curve of wood, every shade of paint, every pane of stained glass. Someone dreamed this. Someone believed it could last forever. Imagine Hartford, 1873. Farmington Avenue is mud and wheel ruts. The hill overlooks the city, but nothing yet exists here, only wind, grass, and the distant hum of factories and church bells. Samuel Clemens, 37, wealthy, famous, and eager to leave a mark, stands with his wife Olivia and the architect Edward Tuckerman Potter. Clemens has a vision, a house full of light and laughter, a home for jokes, for children, for books. Potter sketches. Clemens interrupts constantly. The billiard room must sit on the top floor with wide windows. The library must connect to the dining room for conversation to flow. The porch should wrap the house like a steamboat deck. Olivia interrupts too, insisting on warmth, safety, and a steady home where their daughters can grow far from hotel rooms and rented apartments. The first budget is $45,000, a fortune in 1874. By completion, costs will approach $70,000. Yet Clemens is confident. His books sell, his lectures draw packed halls. Money flows almost as quickly as he spends it. Within weeks, the plans are finalized. Construction begins. Foundations of stone and brick sink deep into Hartford clay. Walls rise, red brick patterned with black and orange, Gothic and Victorian, a touch of whimsical steamboat flair. Potter calls it modern Gothic, but it is unlike any other house in Hartford. Workers haul lumber and glass up the hill. Masons set bricks in intricate designs. Carpenters carve banisters, door frames, and paneling. Floor by floor, room by room, the house takes shape. Clemens visits often, pacing through echoing spaces, imagining furniture, imagining laughter. He jokes with workers who may not know they are helping build a home for Mark Twain himself. Inside, artisans work for months. Italian craftsmen carve elaborate woodwork. Artists stencil ceilings in jewel tones. Tiffany windows glow with colored glass. The drawing room boasts embossed leather walls and painted wood panels. The library grows floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Clemens demands the latest technology: running water, central heating, gas lighting, and eventually a telephone. America can build a home as refined as any in Europe, he believes. Olivia's touch is everywhere, too. Wallpapers, fabrics, furniture placement, her hand guides the soul of the house. It is beautiful, it is functional, it is a dream solidified in brick and timber. And yet, as Maya walks down the banister, tracing centuries-old carvings, she knows the house is more than architecture. It is hope, ambition, love, and loss, all layered into every corner. This house was meant to last forever, and in its way, it has. Maya stands in the front hall, imagining sunlight spilling into the nursery, evening fires glowing in the drawing room. Every detail of this house, the carved wood, the stained glass, the painted ceilings, was chosen with care, every color and curve reflecting the vision of a young man who had conquered success, yet still sought permanence. To understand this house is to understand Samuel Clemens. He writes about America, its humor, its greed, its contradictions, but here, on this Hartford hillside, he builds his own America. A world where ambition and comfort coexist, where the son of a Mississippi steamboat pilot can live like Eastern gentry, where laughter and love can shield the family from the hardships beyond these walls. By 1874, the house is ready enough to move in. Furniture arrives, rugs unfurl across polished floors, books climb shelves, fires burn in every hearth. The Clemens family steps across the threshold for the first time as residents. 3 daughters, Susie, the eldest of 2, Clara, an infant, and the memory of Langdon, their first son, who died 2 years prior at 19 months, still echoing through their hearts. This house is meant to be a sanctuary, a fresh start. Olivia lingers in the front hall, eyes sweeping over the staircase, the windows, the ceilings. Clemens slips an arm around her shoulder. "We did it," he says. She nods, believing, as they both do, that this house will hold them, protect them, and anchor their lives. Maya, standing here more than a century later, knows what Bay could not. This home will shelter them for 17 years, then release them, carrying both their joy and their grief forward into memory. Chapter 3. A House Full of Laughter. She steps into the library. Immediately the room feels alive. Floor-to-ceiling books tower around her. Chairs are arranged as though the family has just stepped away and could return at any second. She can almost hear it, Clemens reading aloud, his voice shifting with each character. 3 daughters sprawled on cushions, wide-eyed, Olivia smiling quietly in her chair. For 17 years, this house is precisely what they imagined. By late 1874, the family is settled. Susie toddles through the halls, curious and lively. Clara, a baby, watches the world from her crib. Jean will be born in 1880, adding to the bustle. The girls grow up running through rooms, sliding down banisters, hiding in closets, their laughter bouncing off the walls like music. Upstairs, Clemens works in the billiard room, his favorite space. A small desk near the window overlooks Hartford's skyline. He paces, lines of prose forming in his mind, sometimes lining up a billiard shot between paragraphs. Drafts are read aloud, each syllable tested against the rhythm of his own voice. Here, Tom Sawyer takes shape, then The Prince and the Pauper, then Huckleberry Finn. American literature is forged in this vibrant Victorian mansion. Downstairs, the house hums with life. Breakfast in the dining room, lessons in the schoolroom, Olivia overseeing staff, appointments, budgets. Cooks prepare meals, maids scrub, polish, and mend, coachmen tend the horses in the stables. 6 or 7 full-time staff members sustain the household. Coal, groceries, gas, repairs, the endless rhythm of running a grand home never stops. Yet money keeps arriving. Clemens lectures, his books sell. New ventures promise even greater wealth. Evenings become ritual. The family gathers in the library. Clemens doesn't just read, he performs, becoming each character, complete with voice, gesture, and movement. The daughters beg for one more chapter, and he usually obliges. Christmas transforms the mansion into a spectacle. A towering tree rises in the front hall, nearly reaching the stained-glass skylight. Presents pile beneath it. Carols echo around the piano. Guests arrive from New York, Boston, Europe. The rooms overflow with laughter and conversation. Writers, editors, politicians, actors, anyone of interest is welcome at the Clemens table. Dinners stretch long into the night, debates leaping from literature to politics to machines, inventions, and ideas. Clemens holds court, stories flowing until the table erupts in laughter. Sometimes the girls watch from the stairs in nightgowns, meant to be asleep, drawn by the warmth and light below. Susie blossoms into a thoughtful, serious child. Poems and journals mark her days, her observations sharp beneath a gentle exterior. Clara thrives socially and musically, piano practice and song blending into the household symphony. Jean, bold and restless, charges through the house, climbs trees in the yard, and peppers the family with endless questions. Olivia works tirelessly to guide them. Manners, music, French lessons, piano, discipline, all intended to mold them into young ladies befitting the household. And through it all, this house holds them. Every brick, every pane of glass, every carved detail witnesses laughter and tears, hope and ambition. It is more than a home. It is a stage, a sanctuary, a cradle for a family's dreams and a forge for a nation's stories. Clemens pushes his daughters in a different direction. He wants them curious, fearless, unafraid to speak their minds. The house absorbs it all, the laughter and the tears, the order and the chaos, quiet mornings and riotous nights, grand dinners and secret midnight games, the hushed hours of writing and the riotous clamor of friends. Every brick, every beam, every pane of glass bears witness to a family alive with hope, ambition, and the illusions of control. Maya opens her notebook. This house was not just shelter, she writes. It was belief made solid, the idea that life could be shaped, controlled, made safe through wealth, planning, and care. She glances around the library. Every book on these shelves was chosen. Every lamp, every rug, every chair, every painting meticulously placed. Someone obsessed over this room, wanted it perfect. Yet perfection carries a price, and as the tour guide had mentioned earlier, money was already beginning to slip through their fingers. She moves toward the dining room. Sunlight spills across the long polished table. Silver glints. Crystal catches the light, scattering sharp sparks across the cloth. 12 place settings, enough for the family and a circle of guests. Maya imagines them here, evenings filled with conversation and laughter, debates over politics and literature, Clemens holding court, his stories filling the room with energy. And yet, above all that life and noise, Unpaid bills and letters of debt quietly wait upstairs, invisible but insistent. Chapter 4. Hairline Cracks, Jokes, Debts, and Strain. Maya runs her hand along the table's polished surface. She wonders how much effort went into maintaining every detail: the gleaming wood, the fires in each hearth, the warmth and light throughout this enormous house. Staff wages, coal for heating, gas lighting, repairs. 6 full-time servants sustaining the household year after year. The rhythm is relentless, but the money, even with Clemens' fame, cannot keep pace with ambition. She steps into Clemens' study, tucked away from the grandeur of the library and drawing room. The desk is plain, the chair worn. Here business happened. Letters arrived, bills piled up, numbers stubbornly refused to balance. Hartford, early 1880s. Mark Twain is at the zenith of fame. His books sell in massive quantities. Lectures fill halls across America and Europe. Newspapers, magazines, editors, fans all want a story, a joke, a moment with him. Yet wealth, the steady kind needed to sustain a household like this, is another matter. The mansion costs roughly $35,000 a year to maintain. Staff wages, coal, gas, repairs, taxes, food, entertaining, expenses arrive without pause. Clemens earns, yet he spends faster. He invests boldly, impulsively, hoping to turn genius into fortune. One gamble is the Page typesetting machine, promising to revolutionize printing. Thousands of dollars flow into the project, then tens of thousands, eventually over $200,000. The machine never works as promised. Twain turns to publishing. Charles L. Webster and Company begins brilliantly. The memoirs of Ulysses Grant sell in numbers that seem to promise lasting wealth. Clemens believes he has found a new path. Yet a publishing company demands patience, focus, discipline, qualities he has in bursts, never sustained. Gradually, money drains away. At dinner parties, he dazzles, witty, charming, magnetic. Guests leave enchanted by his timing, storytelling, and warmth. But late at night, in this quiet study, he is pale, tense, jaw tight. Letters from publishers, from Page, from banks, reveal totals that refuse to balance. No matter how he shifts the numbers, the sums remain stubbornly wrong. Olivia bears another weight. The house is her domain. Staff, meals, appointments, endless entertaining. She makes it look effortless. Clemens reminds her these events are essential for business, for book sales, for influence. Yet the cost is personal. She carries the strain in silence. The children grow. Susie, delicate and sensitive, often ill. Jean, restless, prone to mysterious seizures. Clara, caught between her sister's drama, requires attention too. Education, lessons, proper clothes, social etiquette, all must be orchestrated perfectly. On the surface, the house shines. Meals appear on time. Guests are charmed. Candles glow. Floors gleam. Lamps glow warmly. But beneath the perfection, tension hums like a hidden current, pulling at walls, floors, and the hearts of its inhabitants. Each polished surface, every meticulously placed object, is a fragile veneer over the cracks forming in wealth, ambition, and family. Maya lingers in the study. She imagines him here, late at night, the jokes, the laughter, the letters of debt, the mounting pressures. The mansion held more than furniture or books. It held dreams, hopes, ambitions, and the invisible fractures that would one day threaten to undo it all. The silver gleams. Fires burn in every room before anyone feels a chill. On the surface, the house is perfect. But behind closed doors, Olivia quietly urges Clemens to cut costs, fewer trips, smaller dinners, safer investments. He nods, promising caution,
And then, as if fate mocks restraint, another irresistible opportunity arises. A device that must succeed, a lecture tour that will surely restore their fortunes, another venture that cannot fail. The staff notice subtle changes. Conversations stop abruptly when someone enters the room. Clemens paces in his study rather than sitting. Olivia greets the morning mail with a tight smile. One maid whispers to another, "They live like royalty, but something is wrong." Even the girls sense it. Susie, 17 by 1889, writes in her journal about the tension that hangs over the household, the invisible weight pressing down beneath the laughter and glitter. Yet outwardly, the performance continues. The house still glows at night. Parties unfold. Neighbors see the Clemens family as dazzling, successful, enviable.
But inside, cracks deepen. Maya studies a reproduction of a letter from Clemens to Olivia, displayed in the study. Dated 1891, it explains why a new investment will work, why the next lecture tour will cover past losses, why she need not worry. She already knows the grim truth. The publishing company will fail. The typesetting machine will collapse. Debts will mount until Clemens must leave this house entirely, traveling the world on a desperate lecture tour to repay what he owes. But before financial disaster strikes, something even more devastating will break the family. She glances toward the staircase. Susie's bedroom lies at the end of the hall, a room that waits to tell the most tragic chapter. Chapter 5. The Empty Bedroom. Maya climbs the stairs slowly, as if moving through time itself. She has lingered in bright rooms first, the library where stories came alive, the dining room where laughter once roared, the study where Clemens tried to hold the world together. But now there is no escaping the place where the story fractures. At the end of the second-floor hallway, the door stands open. Late afternoon light filters through the window, catching dust particles floating in the air. The room is smaller than she imagined. A single bed with a white coverlet, a writing desk by the window, faded floral wallpaper in pink and green, a short bookshelf stacked with leather-bound volumes, a chair draped with a dress. Museum staff have arranged it as if someone just stepped away, but Susie Clemens never did. August 1896. The family is scattered. Clemens and Olivia are in England on a lecture tour, desperate to repay crushing debts. Clara is with them. Jean stays with family friends elsewhere. Only Susie is in Hartford, hoping for a semblance of home, a connection to safety and childhood no rented flat could provide. Suddenly, she falls ill. Fever, headache, confusion, meningitis. Telegrams are sent urgently across the Atlantic. Her parents scramble to return, but ships take days. They pray. They wait. Each telegram carries hope, yet nothing can hasten the distance of oceans. In Hartford, Susie's condition worsens. Delirium sets in. She cries out for her parents, unable to comprehend why they are absent. The housekeeper sits beside her, hour after hour. Doctors come and go. Medicine, damp cloths, and whispered encouragement cannot halt the relentless advance of her illness. The bedroom transforms into a sick room. Bottles of medicine clutter the nightstand. Damp cloths lie ready for her forehead. Curtains are drawn against the harsh sunlight. The writing desk remains, a silent witness to half-finished poems and letters she never mailed, dreams of a future never realized. She longed to sing, to perform, to step onto a stage that fate would deny. And then the unthinkable. On August 18, 1896, Susie dies in her childhood bedroom.
She is not entirely alone. The housekeeper and a few servants remain, but her parents are still across the ocean, racing against time and tides. The house, which once held laughter, music, and life, now learns grief in the most profound, intimate way.
Maya stands in the quiet room, absorbing the weight of history. The mansion holds every memory, the joy, the creativity, the ambition, and the unbearable sorrow. It is a home, a stage, and a witness all at once. A place where the line between triumph and tragedy was always thin, where a family's dreams and heartbreak were etched into wood, brick, and glass. The telegram reaches Clemens and Olivia at sea. It is brief, final. Susie has died today. Reports say Clemens breaks completely. Olivia collapses, grief-stricken. Clara, their youngest surviving daughter, is shattered. At the next port, the ship turns, racing across the Atlantic back toward America. But they are too late. Too late for the funeral. Too late for anything but grief. When the family finally returns to Farmington Avenue, the mansion that once overflowed with life now smells of death and wilting flowers. Bouquets from the funeral crowd the rooms. The air is heavy, thick with sorrow. Clemens drifts through his own home like a visitor. He stops at Sue's bedroom doorway. He cannot bring himself to enter. Olivia tries once, then never again. The door remains shut. The house itself seems cursed. Every corner holds a memory. Susie running down the stairs, laughter in the library, fingers playing the piano in the drawing room. Yet she is gone. The child who once animated these rooms has vanished, and the house meant to protect her did nothing. Within days, Clemens and Olivia leave Hartford. They cannot remain here. Every wall presses down on them. Every hallway whispers what they have lost. They never live in this house again, not as a family, not in any true sense. The mansion on Farmington Avenue, built as a promise of permanence and safety, has become a monument to failure. The money is gone. Their daughter is gone. The belief that walls and brick can keep tragedy at bay has crumbled. Maya stands in Sue's empty room, staring at the pristine bed, imagining the life that could have been. She recalls her own father's house, sold hastily after his death. How quickly a home can shift, from sanctuary to prison, from joy to echoing grief, in a single tragic moment.
Downstairs, the museum is winding down. The guide's voice drifts faintly upward, wrapping up the last tour. Doors open and close. Footsteps shuffle toward the exit. Maya takes one last look at Sue's writing desk, the books stacked neatly on shelves, the window where the young woman must have gazed out over Hartford, imagining a future she would never live to see. Then, with a soft click, she closes the door behind her. The first act is over. The dream has collapsed, and on the other side of the staircase, darkness waits. Chapter 6. Leaving the Stage. Maya descends the stairs, returning to the front hall where the tour began hours ago. The house is empty now, save for a single staff member preparing to lock up. The silence feels heavier than it did that morning, final, almost tangible. She imagines the same silence in 1896, after the Clemens family departed Hartford. The windows dark, furniture draped in white sheets, grates cold, hearths empty, the staff dismissed, the family gone. Every room, every hallway, a reminder of Susie. The home that was meant to shield them from misfortune has become a mausoleum of memory. Yet legally, the house remains theirs. They still pay taxes,
They still owe debts, massive sums from the failed publishing venture, from the typesetting machine, from years of lavish living as if income would never end.
By now, Clemens is 59, famous but financially ruined, heartbroken but obligated to survive. The solution is harsh. He returns to the lecture circuit, America, Europe, around the globe. Night after night, city after city, hotel after hotel, he stands on stage, making audiences roar with laughter, while his own heart feels hollow. Olivia travels with him, sustaining the household on the road. Clara accompanies them. Jean remains behind, cared for by relatives. The family has fractured. Their once vibrant Hartford mansion, filled with the laughter and ambition of a celebrated household, has become an empty shell, a silent witness to their grief and the relentless passage of time. Here, in the empty rooms of Susie's bedroom and the silent halls of Farmington Avenue, the story of ambition, joy, and unthinkable loss is etched into every wall. The house no longer shelters them. It holds only memory. Taller, more severe, Gothic, almost theatrical, the mansion rises over Hartford like a monument to memory itself, a building that collects stories whether anyone wants it to or not. Maya imagines everyone who lived here after the Clemens family left. Strangers sleeping in Susie's room, children running down the same stairs where a coffin had once been carried, new families carving out lives in rooms still heavy with old grief. Did they feel it? Did they know the weight of the past pressing through the walls, the echoes of laughter turned to silence? Hartford, early 1900s. The mansion changes hands repeatedly. One tenant leaves, another moves in. A businessman rents the second floor with his family for 2 years. His children play in the nursery where the Clemens daughters once chased one another, unaware of history. To them, it is merely a sprawling, eccentric house with strange angles and too many stairs. The wife of the family reportedly avoids the drawing room. Something about it feels wrong, too watchful, too alive. She goes in only when necessary, feeling the presence of memories she cannot name. Downstairs, another family rents the first-floor rooms. A widow and her adult son live quietly. The son works downtown. The mother remains at home, cooking in the kitchen that once fed crowded dinners and midnight guests. At night, she hears footsteps overhead. Soft, light steps, like a child's bare feet gliding along the hall. She mentions it to her son. He shrugs. Old houses creak, old houses settle. That is all. But the footsteps return night after night, always in the same hallway, always the same delicate tread. Eventually, the widow confronts the landlord. He hesitates, then admits, a famous writer once lived here. Mark Twain, of course. She presses further. Did something happen? Slowly, he confesses. His daughter died upstairs long ago. That is all he says. The widow stops asking questions, but the footsteps do not stop. Word spreads. Slowly, Hartford whispers, the house where Mark Twain lived is haunted. Stories travel over back fences, through corner shops. Each retelling adds details, some imagined, some remembered. A child's laughter echoing in empty rooms, a figure on the staircase vanishing when looked at twice, doors that close on their own, a cold patch outside Susie's old bedroom. Servants whisper among themselves. One maid refuses to go upstairs alone after dark. Another abruptly resigns without explanation. With every new voice, the tales grow. Mark Twain's house becomes Mark Twain's haunted house. The dead daughter transforms into legend. Real grief becomes entertainment, a shiver for curiosity, a thrill for daring local children. Teenagers linger on the sidewalk, staring at the windows, imagining shapes in the shadows. The mansion, built as a proud symbol of wealth, refinement, and comfort, drifts into Hartford's favorite Gothic tale. Yet reality is simpler and far sadder.
The house is not haunted by spirits. It is haunted by memory, by the weight of loss, by the gap between what was promised and what life delivered. Tenants arrive and depart. Most stay only a year or two. The house is expensive to heat. Its layout, grand and formal, is awkward for ordinary families. Rooms are too large, too deliberate, built for entertaining that no one practices anymore. Ceilings tower, halls stretch endlessly, and the angles feel almost theatrical, designed for drama and spectacle rather than daily life. By 1910, Mark Twain is gone. He dies never returning to Hartford, never facing the rooms he once loved. Jean dies tragically in 1999, succumbing to a seizure in a bathtub. Only Clara survives, with no desire to reclaim her childhood home. To her, the mansion is an asset, a line on paper, nothing more. Eventually, she sells it.
The new owners care not for preservation, sentiment, or history. They care for profit. The house, once alive with laughter, ambition, and grief, becomes a commodity. Its walls still echo stories, old and new, but the living who once knew its heart are gone. Memory lingers. Grief lingers. The mansion stands, Gothic and theatrical, a silent witness to the rise and fall of the family who sought to make it eternal. It is a building of contradictions, beauty and sorrow, pride and ruin, joy and tragedy. Every stair, every window, every shadowed corner holds the residue of lives once lived, dreams once dreamed, and laughter that will never return. In Hartford, it is not just a house, it is a story etched in brick and glass, a story of love, loss, and the impossible weight of memory. The house is large, imposing, and unmistakably beautiful. Hartford is growing, its streets alive with horses, streetcars, and the smoke of new factories. The address is desirable. To the new owners, this mansion is an opportunity waiting to be seized. Maya pulls out her phone, flipping through her notes from yesterday's museum tour. The guide spoke quickly, almost apologetically, of this chapter in the house's life. Even a century later, people seem uneasy admitting what happened here. The house that Mark Twain built, the house where some of America's most enduring literature was written, the house that held laughter, grief, and whispered ghost stories. And now, it is about to be carved apart. Maya saves her notes and walks slowly toward her hotel, contemplating the painful trajectory of this grand home. How does a mansion transform into a tenement? How does a dream become a mere address where families scrape by on low rent? The answer is both simple and devastating, one decision at a time, one compromise after another, until all that remains is the shell. Chapter 8. Chop it up, rent it out. Maya returns the next morning with her camera, but she does not start filming immediately. She sits in her car across the street, staring at the mansion as it stands now, restored and cared for, yet hiding decades of trauma within its walls. She imagines its darker history, smaller windows nailed into wide openings, thin doors replacing carved wood, walls slicing through once grand rooms. For decades, the beauty of the mansion was smothered beneath linoleum, drywall, and neglect. Hartford, 1918. The new owners bring in contractors with a single blunt directive: maximize rental income. The mansion is no longer one home, it must become many. Carpenters walk through the rooms, studying the layout, calculating how to extract every possible unit. The drawing room, once the heart of family gatherings and candlelit dinners, is sliced in two. The ornate ceiling survives, stenciled and painted, but now belongs to two separate households who may never meet. The billiard room, where Mark Twain drafted Huckleberry Finn, is divided into three cramped offices. Windows are partitioned, desks replace tables, and clerks tap away where a literary giant once imagined new worlds. The grand staircase survives, but its role changes. It becomes a common hallway, a corridor for tenants who brush past each other silently, hands grazing the carved banister that now serves only a practical purpose. The library, once a temple of knowledge, is gutted. Bookshelves are torn out, leaving two minuscule apartments where once entire volumes of literature stood. A stenographer rents one side, a factory worker occupies the other. Through thin walls they hear arguments, coughs, dreams, and whispers, life squeezed into spaces never meant to contain it. The kitchen is chopped up too. Multiple hot plates and ice boxes are installed. Tenants share the same room but cook separately, racing against each other in the morning.
From the street, the mansion appears unchanged. Brick facade, Gothic windows, wraparound porch. Inside, it is a maze of narrow passages, abrupt angles, and doors that open straight into other doors. The rooms feel wrong, every corner a reminder that the house was never meant to exist in this fragmented state. Rent is low. That is all that matters. Hartford continues to grow. Workers need housing. The mansion provides shelter, but not dignity, memory, or reverence for its former life. In 1923, Dorothy, a single mother and stenographer, rents a tiny unit on the second floor. One room, a shared bathroom at the end of a hall, $50 a month. Exhausted from 6 days of work downtown, she returns to make dinner on a hot plate and types freelance work at a small table for extra income. At night, she feels watched, not by ghosts, but by the room itself. The peeling wallpaper hints at a past life. Wavy old glass and solid floorboards speak to craftsmanship long forgotten. The room had been built to matter, to last. Now it holds only one small life squeezed into what was meant to be grand. She shares her feelings with a neighbor, an older insurance clerk. He nods knowingly. "You can tell this place used to be something," he says, "like living in a wedding dress someone cut into dishcloths." The image lodges in her mind, impossible to forget. As decades pass, the mansion deteriorates further. Paint peels, the porch sags, and minor repairs are left undone. Outside, Hartford evolves. Horses vanish, replaced by cars. Factories rise, office buildings tower, and the mansion, once a symbol of refinement, becomes simply old.
By the 1930s, the Great Depression makes matters worse. Rents fall, maintenance halts, tenants churn faster than ever. Some stop paying, others leave without warning. Roofs leak, water stains bloom across ceilings, plaster cracks and falls, heating systems wheeze. In winter, residents keep coats on indoors, huddled beneath extra blankets. The mansion dies slowly, not from fire or structural collapse, but from 1,000 tiny neglects. Every corner cut, every repair postponed, every year of treating it as property rather than architecture drains the life from its walls. And yet the house endures, stubborn and silent, a witness to its own destruction, a ghost of what it once promised. The mansion that Mark Twain built, a home of laughter, dreams, and ambition, is reduced to partitioned units inhabited by lives that can never know its past. The story is not of haunting spirits, but of haunting memory, the weight of dreams that could not survive time, mismanagement, and compromise. Dorothy moves out in 1935. She finds a newer apartment downtown, smaller, cleaner, built from the start to be practical, honest about what it is. She never tells anyone she once lived in Mark Twain's house. She does not know its significance. The landlord never mentioned it, and even if he had, what would it have changed? The building she remembered was no longer the Clemens mansion. It was just another address, where families scraped to survive the cold winters and tight budgets.
Maya finally lifts her camera. She films the drawing room, restored and glowing as if it remembers the laughter and debates that once filled it. She moves through the library, the billiard room, the grand staircase. Yet in her mind, she sees the mansion's darker years, the walls that cut grand spaces in half, flimsy partitions that trapped tenants in cramped quarters, cheap paint covering layers of original beauty, and the slow erasure of every choice the Clemens family had made. She wonders aloud, at what point does a house stop being a home and become just a container for survival? And once that happens, can it ever truly come back? Chapter 9. The Letter That Almost Buried It. Maya lowers her camera and walks to the window. Outside, Hartford Avenue hums with life. Cars slide past in steady streams. Pedestrians sip coffee, scroll through phones, and hurry down sidewalks. Hartford has moved on, from the Depression, from the decade when this mansion was reduced to cheap apartments, from the long stretch of neglect and compromise that almost erased its history entirely. But the house nearly did not survive. Maya turns back, picturing it empty. Windows boarded, wallpaper peeling, city notices nailed to the door, condemned and slated for demolition. That was nearly its ending. Hartford, 1955. The mansion is 75 years old, and every year is written on its walls. The cut-up apartments are barely livable. The old heating system sputters. The roof leaks in dozens of places. Plaster falls from ceilings in pale, brittle chunks. The front porch sags. The current owner, weary of repair bills, tenant complaints, and midnight furnace calls, has had enough. The building is more burden than asset. Then comes a developer with an offer, blunt, cold, and practical. Tear it down, level the lot, replace it with something useful, a parking lot, a commercial building, a modern structure for a city racing toward the future. Hartford needs space. Hartford needs profit. And, they argue, Hartford does not need a decaying Victorian shell tied to a writer most people barely remember. Permits are drawn up.
Demolition is scheduled for early 1956. The house that survived Susie's death, Samuel Clemens' departure, decades of neglect and subdivision, is about to vanish completely. But then, someone reads a newspaper. Her name is Ellen Brown. She is 63 years old, a librarian, a lifelong Hartford resident. She has watched her city change, street by street, building by building. She reads the Hartford Courant every morning with her coffee. Most days, the paper offers little more than city council debates, crime reports, and society notes. But on a cold November morning in 1955, her eyes snag on a small notice buried on page 7. Demolition proposed for the Clemens property on Farmington Avenue. Ellen freezes. She reads the line again. Clemens property. Mark Twain's house, the place where Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn were written, the house she passed as a girl when it still stood proud and people still whispered about the family who lived there, scheduled for demolition. Her coffee cup trembles in her hands. The words blur. This cannot happen. This must not happen. That house is not just a building. It is Hartford's memory, America's memory. You do not bulldoze the place where Mark Twain lived, dreamed, and wrote. You do not trade it for painted parking lines. But she is just a librarian. What can one person do? Ellen starts small. She calls friends, other librarians, teachers, members of her church, anyone she thinks might feel the same urgency. She tells them clearly, simply, with a sense of disbelief and alarm. They are going to tear down Mark Twain's house. We have to stop it. Most people are stunned. Few had realized the mansion's condition, let alone its imminent fate. That old place on Farmington, they say? I had no idea Twain lived there. And that, Ellen realizes, is exactly the problem. The house has been forgotten. Its stories, its grief,
its glory erased from collective memory, until now.
Ellen mobilizes her community. She writes letters, she petitions city officials, she speaks to local newspapers. Her argument is simple but powerful. History matters. Literature matters. Legacy matters. The building is more than brick and mortar. It is a testament to creativity, ambition, family, and survival. For the first time in decades, attention turns to the mansion. Eyes that once passed over it without notice now see the carved woodwork, the Gothic windows, the wraparound porch, the spaces that once held life, laughter, and loss. Preservationists, historians, and ordinary citizens rally. The demolition is paused. Conversations begin. Funding is proposed. And slowly, painstakingly, the mansion begins its return from the brink. Maya leans against the window, staring at the house bathed in the soft afternoon light. She films the restored drawing room, imagining Dorothy in her cramped apartment decades ago, and Ellen holding a coffee-stained newspaper, refusing to let history vanish. She reflects on resilience, not just of bricks, but of memory, passion, and the choices of people who refuse to let something precious disappear. Mark Twain's Hartford mansion is alive again, not just as a building, but as a story of creation, loss, survival, and revival. And in the quiet of the restored rooms, Maya whispers to herself, "This house almost died, but thanks to those who remembered, it will never be forgotten." Ellanellar Brownell says no one remembers, but memory does not need a crowd to matter. She knows the mansion on Farmington Avenue cannot be allowed to vanish, so she acts. She organizes a committee. They call themselves the Mark Twain Memorial. At first, there are only 6 of them: 3 librarians, 2 teachers, 1 retired journalist. They gather in Ellen's modest living room, surrounded by stacks of books, clippings, and notes. The air smells faintly of ink and determination. Their first task is simple: attention. If no one sees the crisis, nothing can change. They phone newspapers, they contact radio stations, they write letters to editors. Their message is sharp, urgent. Hartford is about to destroy its most important literary landmark. Do we care about our own story or not? The reaction is mixed. Some people rally immediately, save the house, protect our heritage. Others shrug. It's just an old building, they say. The city needs progress, not sentiment. The developer pushes back harder. Repairs would cost a fortune, he insists. Better to tear it down and start fresh than pour money into a wreck. Ellen and her small committee argue back. The bones are strong. The real damage is in plaster and paint. With proper funding, careful planning, and serious work, the building can be restored. But money is cruel. Their coffers are nearly empty. Donations trickle in like a slow leak. $10 from one supporter, $20 from another. A local school runs a bake sale and proudly sends $43 in an envelope. It is nowhere near enough. The developer sets a firm deadline. If the committee cannot raise real money and present a credible preservation plan by March 1956, demolition will proceed. No excuses, no delays. Late at night, Ellen sits at her kitchen table, pencil in hand, sketching out calculations on a yellow pad. They need thousands of dollars. They have only hundreds. The gap feels like a canyon. Doubt creeps in. Maybe the house is meant to be torn down. Maybe clinging to the past is foolish. Perhaps Hartford truly needs parking lots more than it needs a decaying Victorian shell. Then she thinks of Mark Twain, of Susie's empty bedroom, of the families who lived here, who loved and lost, who built dreams inside these walls. Someone has to care. Someone has to say no. Someone has to remember out loud. She picks up her pen again and begins writing letters. Foundations, wealthy families with Hartford roots, anyone whose name has ever appeared on a museum placard or library wing.
One of these letters, she does not know which, will land on the right desk and change the fate of the house. Maya, standing in the restored library decades later, reads about Ellen's campaign on a museum placard. Her reflection overlays old black and white photographs, a gray-haired woman standing defiantly in front of a worn mansion. One person, one tiny newspaper notice, one stubborn choice to care. Sometimes that is all it takes to save history. Almost. Chapter 10. A Miracle and a Collapse. Maya stops before a black and white photograph. It shows Ellen in 1956, small in frame, gray-haired, wearing a dark coat and sensible shoes. Behind her, the mansion is battered, peeling paint, broken shutters, some windows boarded. And yet Ellen smiles. Somehow, against all odds, she has won the first battle. Spring 1956. The demolition deadline looms only days away. Ellen's committee has raised some funds, gathered petitions with hundreds of signatures, and secured newspaper editorials. They have the public's attention, but not yet the one thing that matters to banks and developers, a concrete financial plan proving the mansion can survive. Then a letter arrives at Ellen's house. Thick, creamy paper, a New York return address. She had written to the foundation weeks ago, nearly forgotten. Hands trembling, she opens it. Inside is a pledge, serious funding, not enough to restore the mansion fully, but enough to buy time, enough to prove to the developer that the committee is serious. A down payment, a lifeline. The foundation's letter explains, their mission is historic preservation. Mark Twain is a major American writer. His Hartford home must not be lost. They are prepared to help. Ellen sinks into a chair, exhaling for the first time in weeks. She dials committee members, one by one. Emergency meeting tonight. By midnight, the dining table is covered in papers and plans. Step 1, purchase the property. Step 2, halt the demolition permit. Step 3, launch a campaign for full restoration. One step at a time, methodical, relentless. The developer is displeased, but money is money. The committee's pledge, modest but real, changes the conversation. The house is officially saved. Against all odds, a battered Victorian that had witnessed joy, grief, neglect, and decay will remain standing. Maya walks slowly through the restored mansion, imagining the walls' secret histories, the laughter of the Clemens children, Susie's empty bedroom, decades of cheap partitions and broken dreams, and finally, Ellen's quiet, determined intervention. She films the drawing room, now glowing with soft light. She moves through the library, the billiard room, the grand staircase. Each corner speaks not only of the past, but of resilience, of the idea that memory, care, and stubborn love can save what seems lost. Ellanellar Brownell, librarian, small in stature but enormous in determination, had refused to let history vanish. One woman, with nothing more than a pencil, a few friends, and unwavering conviction, had altered the fate of an American treasure. Maya reflects on this as she steps outside, the afternoon sun catching the mansion's restored Gothic windows. The city moves around it, modern, bustling, alive. Yet here stands a building that remembers. It tells a story of creation and loss, of neglect and near destruction, of determination and, finally, redemption. Mark Twain's Hartford home endures, not just as architecture, but as a testament to the power of remembering, the courage to act, and the extraordinary difference one person can make.
Newspaper headlines blazed with triumph. Mark Twain's house preserved. Ellanellar Brownell gave radio interviews, her voice calm but insistent. The committee posed for photographs, standing proudly in front of the mansion's battered facade. For a brief, brilliant moment, it felt like the story had reached its happy ending. But the victory was only half won. June of 1956, Eleanor and her committee finally stepped through the front doors alongside architects and contractors. They brace for the decay, expecting leaks, cracked plaster, and faulty wiring. What they encounter is far worse. The carved woodwork is gouged and broken, sections of walls ripped out, stained glass panels cracked or missing. Elaborate ceilings sag under years of water intrusion, stained brown and black. The heating system is not just outdated, it is dead. Plumbing rusted, unsafe. Electrical wiring snakes through rooms in reckless disregard of modern codes. Walls crudely erected during its years as apartments block sightlines and distort the original design. Floors spongy, needing reinforcement. The roof, they realize immediately, cannot be patched. It must be replaced entirely. Cracks appear in the foundation itself. An architect walks through the wreckage, then turns quietly to Eleanor. This isn't restoration. This is resurrection. Weeks later, the cost estimate arrives. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, perhaps more. The foundation grant had been enough to secure the deed and halt the demolition, but bringing the house back to life, that is another universe entirely. The numbers hit the committee table like a physical weight, pressing down on their exhausted shoulders. The committee gathers again. The early excitement has vanished, replaced by grim, silent calculation. They have saved the building from bulldozers, but not from decay. They cannot open it to the public, not safely, not with ceilings ready to fall and electrical hazards lurking. For now, the house exists in limbo, too precious to destroy, too broken to inhabit.
One member suggests selling it, letting another buyer take the risk. At least it won't become a parking lot, he says. Eleanor shakes her head. We did not fight this hard to hand it off and hope, she says. Then what do we do? Someone asks. Eleanor has no answer ready. The bank sets new deadlines, mortgage payments, insurance, basic costs of ownership. If the committee cannot meet these obligations, foreclosure looms. They launch another campaign, this one powered by grim determination rather than excitement. Letters to donors, public talks, small events in school auditoriums and church basements. Donations arrive, slowly, $5 in one envelope, $10 in another. A wealthy Hartford family sends a check for $1,000, an enormous gift, but still a fraction of what is required. By autumn, the committee is visibly exhausted. Eleanor appears thinner in photographs from those months, her shoulders slightly hunched, eyes shadowed by weeks of sleepless nights. She has poured her savings, her time, and her energy into a battle that seems endless. The numbers still do not add up. One evening, Eleanor stands alone in the mansion's dining room. The long table is gone, walls scarred from old partitions. The ceiling has open holes. Water damage has warped and buckled the floorboards. She whispers into the empty space, almost as if the house can hear her. We saved you. I just do not know if we can keep you. Outside, the sun slides behind the Hartford skyline. Light drains from the windows. The mansion sinks back into shadow. Eleanor locks the front door and walks to her car. Tomorrow brings another meeting with the bank about money they do not have and deadlines they cannot meet. Driving home past new office blocks, low concrete parking lots, and glowing neon signs of progress, she glances in the rearview mirror. Behind her, the mansion sits on its small rise, empty, saved but not safe, rescued but not yet restored. Maya, decades later, reads about this period on a museum placard. The curators call it the dark years, stretching from 1956 to 1963, 7 long years of barely hanging on. And yet, against every expectation, the house did not fall. The question lingers in Maya's mind. Who or what finally tipped the balance? Who ensured that this historic shell survived when so much threatened to destroy it? Chapter 11. Years of Dust and Paint. Maya walks through the restored mansion with new eyes.
Every perfect detail she sees now, the polished wood, the bright stenciled ceilings, the glowing stained glass, was once broken, dusty, forgotten. Someone had cared enough to restore each piece, painstakingly, year by year, layer by layer. Walls rebuilt, ceilings reinforced, stained glass replaced, floors repaired, every inch painstakingly brought back from neglect. She imagines Eleanor and the committee moving through these same halls, surrounded by dust and decay, weighing every decision. They faced ceilings that could collapse, wiring that could spark fire, walls that had been torn apart and rebuilt improperly. Yet, against all odds, their persistence saved this building from erasure.
Maya films as she moves from room to room, the drawing room bathed in sunlight, the library lined with restored shelves, the billiard room polished to a quiet glow. She knows the mansion she sees now is not only the result of careful restoration, but also of stubborn human will. One woman's vision, a committee's perseverance, and the countless small acts of care across years transformed what could have been dust and rubble into the vibrant, living museum that tells the story of Mark Twain, his family, and a city that nearly forgot its history. The mansion stands today not only as architecture but as testimony that even after neglect, decay, and near destruction, memory can be preserved, history can be reclaimed, and that sometimes the salvation of a place comes from one person deciding, stubbornly, that it matters. The work took decades. Hartford, early 1960s, Ellanellar Brownell's committee still fights for the mansion, though victory remains elusive. Most days the house stands locked and silent, waiting for attention, for care, for the stubborn human will that might bring it back from decades of neglect. Money trickles in slowly. Local bake sales, school fund drives, modest checks from devoted readers of Mark Twain, a few larger gifts from foundations dedicated to preserving American literature. It is never enough for a full restoration, but it is enough to keep the lights on, to keep the dream alive. The committee begins small, room by room. Volunteers arrive on weekends, retired teachers, Trinity College history students, local craftsmen donating their skills. They wear old clothes, carry their own tools, and step into the dust-filled rooms. First, they undo the worst damage. Thin walls that had chopped grand spaces into cramped apartments are stripped carefully, plank by plank. Drywall and cheap lumber are hauled away. As they peel back decades of neglect, the original architecture emerges, like a hidden treasure slowly uncovered. One volunteer kneels in the drawing room, tracing its original outline. The old proportions, the ceiling details buried under layers of paint still survive. "It's still here," he whispers. "We can bring it back." Layer by layer, paint is tested and removed. Slowly, the Tiffany-designed ceiling stencils re-emerge. Deep reds, warm golds, rich greens, patterns unseen for half a century. Another team restores woodwork, carved banisters, door frames, built-in bookcases. Pieces too far gone are meticulously recreated from photographs and surviving fragments. A local woodworker studies every detail, copying the patterns with painstaking care. Engineers reinforce the structure. Beams are stabilized. Cracks in the foundation are repaired. The roof is replaced section by section, following the original lines as closely as modern materials allow. Progress is painstakingly slow. Funding arrives in bursts, then disappears. Some months work halts entirely for lack of supplies. The house sits halfway saved, a testament to both ambition and fragility. Then a new grant arrives. A generous donor steps forward. Work resumes.
Maya films the library when a museum guide approaches. "You know they found the original Tiffany glass in the basement," he says. "It had been removed decades ago and just stored away. No one threw it out. It's like the house was hiding pieces of itself, waiting for someone to notice."
Restoration pushes through the 1960s and into the 1970s. Archivists scour photographs, letters, and receipts, determined to capture every detail of the Clemens years. What color were the walls? Where did the furniture stand? Which light fixtures were original? Which added later? Letters from Olivia describe fabrics and paint. Magazine spreads show the rooms at their peak. Receipts document carpets, wallpaper, and furnishings. When records are lost, curators make educated guesses, guided by period style and the family's known tastes. By 1974, exactly 100 years after the Clemens family first moved in, the house opens partially to the public. It is far from finished, but safe enough to welcome visitors and honest enough to tell the story. Tour groups move through spaces mid-restoration. Some gleam with fresh work, others reveal exposed plaster and scaffolding. Guides do not hide the truth. They explain the joyful years, the grief, the slow decay, and the determined effort to save the mansion. Visitors respond. Donations appear in collection boxes. Some sign up to volunteer. Friends are told. People return again, drawn by the quiet power of preservation. There is no ribbon-cutting ceremony, no triumphant fanfare, only the steady, patient work of people who refuse to let history vanish. Maya pauses in a doorway, watching a small crew at work. A volunteer measures a wall. Another gently sands a banister. Dust motes float in sunlight through tall windows. Every careful movement tells a story of love, stubbornness, and devotion. This is what it takes to save a house like this. Not a single hero, not a miraculous moment, but a community determined to honor memory, architecture, and literature. A slow, unrelenting commitment to bringing life back to walls that once sheltered laughter, grief, and the genius of Mark Twain himself. The mansion stands now, fully restored, polished, and vibrant. But Maya knows what makes it truly remarkable. The decades of labor, the small acts of care, the stubborn refusal to give up, and even in 2024, the mansion is still alive with work. A conservator leans over a stained glass panel, cleaning each fragment with tiny, meticulous motions. A carpenter sands and repairs trim in a quiet third-floor room. The house is never truly finished. It cannot be. Too much was lost, too much altered over the decades, yet what remains is protected, remembered, honored. Maya thinks of the volunteers from the 1960s. Many are gone. Others are very old. They gave years of their lives to this building, to a dream others barely understood. Most visitors today will never know their names. Ellanellar Brownell died in 1982. She lived long enough to see the house open to the public, to watch people climb the staircase she fought to save. She witnessed her impossible idea take root, though she never saw every room fully restored. That work continues still, and it is slow, patient, deliberate. Maya films the entrance hall one final time. The carved staircase, the stained glass, the painted ceilings, all stunning. But what moves her most is not the beauty itself. It is the cost of that beauty. Decades of labor, the small donations, the unwavering belief that something broken can be made whole. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but whole enough. Chapter 12. The Journal in the Floorboards. Maya's third day at the mansion is behind the scenes. Robert, a preservation specialist, guides her into spaces the public rarely sees. Storage rooms packed with labeled boxes, workshop tables cluttered with tools and fragile fragments. Finally, they climb the narrow stairs to the attic. "Most people never come up here," Robert says, but sometimes the real stories hide where few look. The attic is low and dusty. Light slips through small dormer windows, illuminating rough wooden beams. Boxes are stacked in uneven rows, each labeled by decade. Robert inspects the structure, checking for storm damage and soft spots. Maya follows, filming exposed rafters, old insulation, and layers of history visible in the roof from below. Restoration isn't just making things pretty, Robert explains. It's about understanding what happened, reading the building like a book. He kneels near a corner where the floorboards look different from the rest. See here? Replaced in the 1920s, probably. Different wood, different nails. The house keeps its record if you know how to read it. Pressing one board, it shifts slightly. Underneath, something dull catches the light. A small, water-damaged notebook. The leather cover is almost black with age and moisture. Robert lifts it carefully. "This should not be here," he says quietly. They carry it to the conservation lab. Wearing gloves, Robert eases the pages apart millimeter by millimeter. The handwriting is faint, pencil on paper, a woman's careful script. The first dated entry is 1922. The author gives only initials, E.M. She is a tenant, renting a small third-floor room for $12 a month. She records brief notes, long days at work, nights exhausted, winters so cold she sleeps in her coat, summers trapping unbearable heat under the roof. She writes of neighbors she hears but barely knows, of life in the shadow of a house too large, too old, and too full of memory. One entry stops Maya cold. March 8, 1923. Mrs. Patterson says a famous writer lived here once, but I do not believe her. This house is too sad and broken for anyone famous. It feels like a place people forgot. I feel forgotten here, too. Sometimes I think the house knows. We are both just waiting. Months later, E.M. writes again. September 14th, 1923. Leaving tomorrow. Found cheaper rooms downtown. I will not miss this place. Too big, too empty, and too full of ghosts. But I feel bad leaving it, like I am abandoning something that cannot take care of itself anymore. The final entry reads, I hope someone remembers this house someday, not because of the famous writer, but because of all of us who lived here when nobody cared. We existed here too. That should count for something. Maya's throat tightens as she reads. She thinks of everyone who passed through during the house's dark years, stenographers working late, factory workers dragging themselves up the stairs, clerks, widows, single mothers. They paid rent, survived, moved on, and were mostly forgotten. The museum preserves Mark Twain's story, Susie's story, Olivia's, Eleanor's, but E.M., just initials in a water-damaged notebook, remains largely unknown. Can we add this to the archives? Maya asks. Robert nods immediately. Of course, this is the house's history too. He lets her photograph the pages, carefully turning each sheet under soft light to protect the fragile spine. That night, in her hotel, Maya scrolls through the photos again. E.M.'s words echo, "We existed here too. That should count for something." She opens a new document. Her original plan for a YouTube script dissolves. Instead, she writes a story that stands alongside Mark Twain's, where clerks, stenographers, widows, and tenants are part of the mansion's timeline, not mere background noise. Her narrative weaves the house's glory years with grief and decay, the long, silent decades when it was a tired building filled with ordinary lives struggling to survive. Every brick, every creaking floorboard, every faded stencil matters. All of it is real. Maya thinks about her own life, student loans, a cramped apartment, the sensation of being one small person in a vast, noisy world. Easy to overlook, easy to erase. Perhaps that is why the mansion resonates so deeply. It is not grandness that moves her.
It is endurance. The house fell apart and survived because someone chose to remember it. Chapter 13. A Haunted House That Heals. 3 weeks later, Maya posts her video. The title is simple, The Dark Story of Mark Twain's Mansion, but the story inside is heavy, quiet, profound. It runs 43 minutes, far longer than her usual work, threading every layer of memory into a single narrative. The brilliance, the heartbreak, the overlooked lives, and the long, patient effort that kept the mansion alive. The video does not just show a Gilded Age postcard. It shows what houses hold inside: fame and failure, grief and hope, the celebrated and the forgotten. It shows how ordinary people matter as much as literary legends, how survival leaves traces just as indelible as genius. Maya leans back, looking at her laptop. She sees the mansion, its restored rooms, its work-in-progress history, and the shadowed attic where E.M. hid her words. She understands, finally. Preservation is never just about beauty. It is about memory, about care, about refusing to let the ordinary slip into oblivion.
The mansion, once broken and forgotten, now survives as a testament to persistence, devotion, and the quiet power of remembrance. And sometimes, the most haunting houses are the ones that heal, not because they are perfect, but because someone chose to notice, someone chose to remember. An unbroken chain of people who understood that history is fragile and worth saving. The mansion's story begins in the 1870s with joy. The Clemens family filled it with laughter, ambition, and dreams. But life is never static. Sue's death shattered the household. The house fell silent, abandoned in stages, and eventually drifted into decay. Grand rooms were sliced into cramped apartments. Walls, once meant to frame light and luxury, became partitions for survival. For decades, ordinary people lived here quietly, their lives invisible against the weight of history. Ellanellar Brownell's fight in the 1950s turned despair into action. She refused to let the mansion vanish, even when demolition seemed inevitable. One by one, she rallied supporters, raised funds, and convinced skeptics. Restoration began slowly, room by room, over decades. Volunteers, retired teachers, students, craftsmen breathed life back into the mansion. Layer by layer, paint was stripped, ceilings restored, woodwork repaired. Every salvaged fragment whispered of resilience and devotion. Yet the mansion's story is not only about grandeur restored. It is about those who lived within its walls when no one cared. The discovery of E.M.'s journal, a tenant from the 1920s, added a voice that had been lost to time. Her words, scrawled in pencil, tell of cold winters, long workdays, and the quiet endurance of forgotten lives. I hope someone remembers this house someday, not because of the famous writer, but because of all of us who lived here when nobody cared. We existed here too. That should count for something.
Maya reads these words aloud in the empty drawing room, letting the silence settle around her. The mansion, now fully restored, glows with polished wood, stained glass, and vibrant ceilings. But it is E.M.'s words, small and humble, that echo most powerfully. They remind us that memory is not only about fame or wealth, but about survival, endurance, and the lives that otherwise slip through history's cracks. Sitting on the front steps at dusk, Maya addresses the camera. "This house was built as a dream," she began, "into a nightmare. Then almost nothing, just cheap rooms where forgotten people tried to survive. And now it is a museum. But what does that really mean?" She pauses, letting the stillness linger. "I think it means we chose to remember. Not only the famous writer, not only the wealth, the books, the parties. We chose to remember the grief, the failure,
the loss, the years when this house was broken and no one cared. We remember all of it because that is the only honest way to love something. The video does not explode overnight. It spreads gradually, steadily. 10,000 views climb to 50,000, then 100,000. Comments pour in, unexpected and heartfelt. "My grandmother lived in that house in the 1930s, one viewer writes. She never told us it was Mark Twain's house. She just said it was cold and sad. Thank you for remembering her." Another, "My family is facing foreclosure right now. This video made me cry, but also gave me hope. Houses can come back. Families can survive loss." A preservationist comments, "This is the clearest explanation I have seen of why we do this work. It is not mainly about buildings. It is about refusing to let stories disappear." The Mark Twain House and Museum reaches out to Maya. They want to feature EM's journal in a new exhibit dedicated to the mansion's full history, every era, every layer of life, not just the Clemens years. Maya agrees immediately.
She returns to Hartford for the exhibit opening. By the front entrance, a small, precise display showcases EM's notebook in a climate-controlled case. Beside it, photographs of the mansion during its tenement years and a reconstructed list of residents from the 1920s and 30s offer context. Across the display, in large type, is a single line from the journal. "We existed here too. That should count for something." School groups pause to read. Tourists lift phones for pictures. Elderly Hartford residents share memories of the building sliced into apartments and offices. One woman, 93, tells Maya, "My father rented an office here in 1941. I visited once as a girl. I remember thinking it was the saddest building I had ever seen. So beautiful, but so broken." Maya turns to the restored drawing room, bathed in warm light. Polished wood, intricate ceilings, stained glass gleaming. She whispers, "I am glad it came back." And in her heart, she knows, the house's power is not in its architecture, but in its memory. This mansion has witnessed joy and grief, triumph and ruin, love and abandonment, fame and near anonymity. Against all odds, it survived, not because it was perfect, but because someone chose to remember, because someone chose to care. Every story matters, the celebrated and the forgotten, the grand and the humble. The Mark Twain house endures, not merely as a monument to genius, but as a living testament to memory, resilience, and the enduring human spirit.